So already the material is with you, and I think already you noted some points which I need to clear to all of you, and some points already you could grasp. Okay, whatever, I'll just tell you about the entire thing, and whenever you will feel that these points should be cleared, and to this particular point I should add more examples, etc. In that case, just tell me about that. Okay, so first I am starting with the first order conditions. Already you are familiar with the optimization kind of thing, therefore I don't need to give much introduction to this. So directly I'm considering n variables at a time which are based or which are coming from the real number line and defining the first order condition. So we consider the unconstrained problems, and this implies any point in real number line is allowed to be a possible solution. Okay, as Upanita tried to tell me, if I go for the constraint optimization, in that case I cannot consider any point on the real number line. Rather, I'll have some boundary. Constraint means I have some boundary, and from that boundary I have to find out the solution. So constraint optimization is something more than you have to find out the solutions from some boundary. However, she is right to some extent. So in case of unconstrained optimization from the real number line, I can choose any.
Ma'am, but here it is not number line, it is real space.
Yeah, it is real space. Yeah, it's real space. Okay, it's real space. Yes. Ion, it's right. An extreme value is a maximum or minimum of a function, while the definition of a stationary value is as follows. As you know, there will be a series of values, and from those series of values, actually, I have to pick and choose an optimum one. So the optimum will be either a maximum or a minimum. A stationary value of a function f over the domain R occurs, yes, it is real space, over the domain of the real space occurs at points, say, x1 star, x2 star, up to xn star, at which the n equalities will hold simultaneously. Would you please mute it? So what I am doing, I have a function carrying n variables x1, x2 to xn. So I am taking the derivative first with respect to x1, then I'll take the derivative with respect to x2, and I'll go on, and finally we'll take the derivative with respect to xn, and set all these first order conditions to be equal to 0. Okay? So all of you know these things. I have to do this thing. I have to take derivative with respect to one variable at a time, keeping rest of the variable fixed, and set this equal to 0. In case of a function of one variable, all stationary points do not provide extreme values, as there is a presence of points of inflection. So I hope all of you are aware of points of inflection when a curve changes its curvature. So maybe it is convex for a particular range, and then it is changing its curvature. So a curve, when it changes its curvature, is called the point of inflection. Okay. So when we consider the single variable cases, all stationary points do not provide extreme values, because there are points which are nothing but point of inflection. Now, can you tell me what will be the value of the second derivative at point of inflection?
0.
0.
0.
Yes, very good. In case of functions of n variables, there is further possibility that a stationary value may be a saddle point. So saddle point is a new concept in context of more than one variables. The idea of saddle point was not there in context of single variable optimization. It is coming only in case of more than one variable context. Since you already went through these entire note, I hope you will be able to tell me what is the idea of saddle point. Anyone, can you tell me what is the idea of saddle point? Anyone? What is meant by saddle point?
Ma'am, basically, like a value at which like the values around that point, in some cases there have maximum values, in some cases there are minimum values, which means that the neighborhood of that particular point does not have either fixed maximum or fixed minimum. It's a variable between both. So we are not being able to decide whether that point is maximum or minimum. So as a result, there is no particular conclusion. As a result, we call it a saddle point. It's mostly an extension of the inflection, I guess, an extension of that only.
I'll not, the last point, you know, it's better not to mention the last point. It is extension of point of inflection. It's not that, you know. So saddle point, as you rightly pointed out, saddle point is neither a maximum nor a minimum, in the sense that, you know, in one direction, if we look at one direction, it may give the maximum. However, if we follow another direction, it will give a minimum. Okay, so this kind of concept. So if we look at these two diagrams, you know, the first diagram, clearly it has the minimum. Okay, it has the it is the minimum with respect to the direction of x1. It is the minimum with respect to the direction of x2. Okay, so if we look at the direction of x1, or if we look at direction of x2, it is minimum. You know, B is clearly a maximum. If you follow this direction, vertical direction or horizontal direction, whatever direction you consider, it is giving you, if you consider the neighborhood, etc., you know, compared to the neighborhood, you know, this particular value is giving the highest value. If you look at the other values, the height of these values are lesser. And here just the reverse. This is the minimum one, the height of any other point along the curve that will be greater than this point, you know. So you can take the neighborhood and can consider the f, the length, you know. So you will find that length will be, f will be higher. Here, f will be lower. So whichever direction you are considering, x1 and x2, it is clearly maximum. A is clearly minimum. However, if we consider this kind of diagram, you know, it is minimum in x1 direction, maximum in x2 direction. So if I follow this direction, you know, it is minimum. Okay, this point is minimum. However, if I follow this direction, in that case, it is maximum. Okay. The reverse is happening here. Here, maximum in x1 direction. If I follow this direction, it is maximum. Whether if I follow this direction, the vertical direction, it is minimum. Okay. So if I find along one direction, it is maximum. If we consider the values around the neighborhood in one direction, if we find this, the point is a maximum, and if we follow the neighborhood in other direction, if we find the point, the same point is a minimum, in that case, we will call it a saddle point. Okay. So this has been done, this diagram has been done considering two variables x1, x2, because when we are doing graphically, it will be difficult to consider more than two variables. However, this concept is applicable for 3 variables, 4 variables, any number of variables which is more than 1. Okay, so this idea is new when we are coming to more than 1 variable case. Okay, now in the beginning, as I told you, when we are starting to talk about the 2 variables, what we can do, I can vary one variable, I can keep the other variable constant, like this, x1 I am varying, x2 I am keeping fixed, here x1 I am keeping fixed, x2 we are varying. Okay, so these cases, though we are considering more than 1 variables, these are the cases where these are equivalent to 1 variable case, because we are keeping rest of the variables constant. Actually, when you learned about short run in context of production, we did the same thing. We kept capital fixed and varied labor only. Okay, so this is the idea. Instead of 2 factors, you can consider 3 factors in production: labor, capital, and land, say. So keeping capital and land fixed, you can vary labor. So it is like this. Okay, so go through all these things. I hope the things are not difficult to understand.
Ma'am, can you please show the direction of maxima minima in the saddle diagram once again?
This is the diagram. What is your...
Ma'am, the direction, the minima and the direction, it is coming to be a maxima.
So if you follow the horizontal direction, in case of C, in this direction, so I hope you are finding that. If you look at the graph, I'm coming to the text next. If you look at the graph, so along this direction, at this particular value of x1, among the all possible values, we are getting the highest coordinate, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And along the vertical direction, if we consider the x2 direction, at x2 star, if I consider x2 star, and then we check the values of different values of x1, we are finding that the same coordinate is giving the minimum. Okay, so it is minimum in x1 direction and maximum in x2 direction. So follow the graph. I'm coming to the text. Thus, the first order conditions are necessary conditions, but not sufficient conditions to generate the relative extremum. Okay, because you may find the first order condition to be equal to 0. Okay, however, whether it is a maximum or it is a minimum, that will be given only by the second order condition. The point that the first order conditions are the necessary conditions can be presented as follows. Already you know this thing. If at point x1 star to xn star, we have local maximum of function f, so that f of x1 star up to xn star is greater than equal to f of any set of values of x1, x2 to xn in a possibly small neighborhood of x1 star, x2 star up to xn star, then the condition, all these first order conditions will hold simultaneously. Okay, so if I consider a small neighborhood, okay, and if we find all these first order conditions are holding simultaneously, we can treat the maximum as the local maximum. Okay, if we look at the small neighborhood, and if this satisfies this condition, f of x1 star up to xn star is greater than equal to f of x1 up to xn, then we will call it a local maximum. Alternatively, if at any point x1 star up to xn star, we have a local minimum, in that case, this condition will be satisfied. F of x1 star up to xn star will be less than equal to f of any set of values of x1, x2 to xn. So here also we are talking about a possibly small neighborhood of x1 star, x2 star, xn star, and we are considering all these first order conditions. Okay, so just after these, I am following mostly Hoy. The book is already there with you, and from this book, these are the exercises which are worked out. Did you check all these things? Or will you
Yes, ma'am.
find
Yes,
out
ma'am.
the values of x1 star, x2 star, etc.?
Yes, ma'am.
Just consider the first order conditions and find out the values. It's very simple. Okay, it's not that you have to use the matrix algebra and do this thing in this way. Simultaneously, you can solve these two equations and you can find out the values. No problem. Okay, so practice all these worked out, and then could you solve all these exercises A to J? Everybody solved all these things? Or only checked the worked out sums? Yes or no? Did anyone do these things? All these things?
Ma'am, not all of the parts.
Few of them I have done. First 5 I have done.
Yes, ma'am.
You have to do all these things, so
Yes,
that you
ma'am.
practice the things and you can find out if there is any problem, etc. Okay, so here there is the cases, where you have to consider the first order conditions and you have to find out the values of x1 and x2. So solve all these things. Now, more important is the second order condition. Okay, because second order condition will suggest whether a point is really a maximum, minimum, or it is a saddle point. So suppose that x1 star up to xn star is a stationary point of function f. If we make small changes in x vector in any direction from this point, it may be x1 direction, it may be x2 direction, x3, x4, any direction. And the result is to reduce the value of f, then this point must yield a local maximum of the function. So what I am doing? I am considering a stationary point, okay, a function f. Now I am making a small changes in x vector in any direction from this point, and result is to reduce, if the f value function continuously reduces, in that case from the point from where we started, that will give me a local maximum. Alternatively, if we make small changes in x vector in any direction from this point, and result is to increase the value of f, then this point must yield a local minimum. That we actually presented in figures A and B. Starting from one point, if I continuously increase the value of f in any direction, then this point gives us the minimum. And if for a small change in the neighborhood, if I find f is increasing, sorry, f is falling, f is continuously falling, in that case, the starting point is a maximum one. Finally, if moving in some direction increases the value of the function, while moving in other direction reduces the value of the function, then the stationary point must be a saddle point. Okay. To understand the above points more clearly, let's consider the function f of x1, x2 to xn. Or we are presenting this entire set x1, x2 to xn using a vector capital X. This is a vector x consisting of n points starting from x1, x2 to xn. At a point x star, this is capital X star, that means the entire vector, we are considering the total differential. Why we are considering total differential? Because we are considering small changes. We have to consider small changes around the values. So I am making dy is equal to f1 x star dx1. I am taking the derivative of x vector, x star vector with respect to x1, then the same vector with respect to x2, and then we are moving up to fn x star dxn. So we have the vector x1, x2 to xn. We are taking derivatives with respect to x1, x2, etc. Okay. Since it is the total differential, I will consider del f by del x1, which is a function of x1 star up to xn star into dx1. It will move like this because I am taking total differential, where the differentials dxi, that is dx1, dx2, etc., are to be interpreted as small given numbers. We can take the differential of this function to obtain the second order differential. So next what we are doing, I am taking differential of this expression. Basically, I am taking the second order derivative of y. So already I have f1 x star dx1. I am taking derivative of that, with respect to x1, then with respect to x2, and that I am considering with respect to xn. That is for the first set. Since it is a function of x1, x2 to xn, when I am taking the second order derivative, I am considering n number of derivatives for the first expression. Then n number of derivatives for the second expression, etc. So if I elaborate, so this is the n number of derivatives, this expression within the square bracket, you will indicate n number of derivatives for x1. The second term within the square bracket will indicate the n number of derivatives with respect to x star. And this last term will indicate n number of derivatives for this x star. Okay. So each of the square bracket basically giving you n numbers, n number of derivatives. So if you expand this thing, f11 x star dx1 dx1, or you can write it as d square x1, then this same expression you are taking derivative with respect to x2. So it is f12 x star dx1 dx2. For this first factor, finally you are taking derivative with respect to n. So it is f1n x star dx1 dxn. Now we will consider this second term and we'll consider the n number of derivatives. Why we are considering this? Because this capital X star is nothing but a vector. Here we have n numbers inside. So when I am taking the second derivative, actually I have to take derivative for all x1, x2 to xn. So we are getting all these numbers for each of the term. So we will go on like this, and in the similar fashion we will get n derivatives for the last term. Okay. So if we summarize this, we can present it in this form. Double summation Fij x star dxi dxj. Okay. When we are writing dx1 dx1 or dx2 dx2 or dxn dxn, I is equal to j. Otherwise, I not equal to j. So this is the idea of second order derivative, when from a small change, we are going for change in that small change. This expression is in quadratic form because you are taking the second order derivative, d square y. So it is in quadratic form. Now suppose that d square y is less than 0 for arbitrary vectors of values dxi. This implies in all directions the value of dy is decreasing around the point x star. Dy is giving you the change, okay, and change or the direction of change in dy will be given by d square y. So d square y is less than 0. That means in all directions, the value of dy is decreasing around the point x star. If dy is 0 at x star, as it must be if x star is an extreme value, then dy is negative in a neighborhood of x star implies that the function is decreasing in a neighborhood of x star, and this in turn implies the function is a local maximum. So if d square y less than 0, this implies in all directions the value of dy is decreasing around the point x star. So x star is a local maximum. We refer this as a local maximum because we only use information about the behavior of dy in a small neighborhood of x star, not over all possible values of x. Now, if I consider all possible values of x, in that case, the same maximum will be considered as the global maximum. Now, here you can take a note. In context of economics, under most of the circumstances, the local maximum will be also a global maximum. Okay. In context of economics, we consider the problems of profit maximization, revenue maximization, then cost minimization, output maximization, utility maximization. Generally, we consider all these things. Under most of the circumstances, you will find that local maximum is also a global maximum, local minimum is also a global minimum. Okay. So under most of the circumstances, our target will be the local maximum or minimum, and in many cases, or most of the cases, actually it will become the global maximum or minimum too. However, when we are discussing it, following the principles of mathematics, in that case, if we consider the small neighborhood, in that case, we will consider these as a local maximum or local minimum. However, if I consider all possible ranges of the values of x, in that case, we will consider the maximum or minimum as a global maximum or minimum. A global maximum would be a maximum of a function taken over all possible vectors x, all possible values of the vector x. Here I am taking a specific set x star. To prove this, let's consider fx using the Taylor series expansion. We can expand fx around the point x star to get for any x hat in the neighborhood of x star that is close to x star. Have you went through these things?
Yes, ma'am. And could you explain this identity once?
Which one?
This dy x star equal to like we are just equating the coefficients, the factor, the first order differential and the deviation from x hat, right?
Yes. So what, here we are considering f of x star, dy of x star, which was there. You know, all this dx kind of thing was there. So all dy in the neighborhood of x star, all changes, all small changes in the neighborhood of x star. And we are also considering the second order derivative, d square y of epsilon, where epsilon lies between x star and x hat. Okay. So it is like this kind of vector. It lies between x star and x hat. Since all partial
Ma'am,
derivatives,
is
yes.
this through Taylor expansion? Then why we have dropped the factorials?
Would you please repeat your question?
Ma'am, I'm saying the first line which you have written, we are using Taylor expansion. Ma'am, then why we have dropped the factorial parts?
Why we dropped the?
Factorial parts.
Because here, you know, we need the change components, you know. So basic Taylor series expansion is something, and when we are using it to present the local and global maximum, you know, in that case, we are considering the small changes in the neighborhood and the second order derivative, you know, change in these dy's. I need only this part. Small neighborhood around x star and change in all these dy. Okay, so first I am considering f of x star, then a change in the neighborhood, and then in which direction this change is moving. I need that part. Okay, therefore I am writing f of x hat like that. I considered, when we consider the local maximum or minimum, I concentrated up to this, f of x star and dy of x star. However, when I am considering x hat, I am also considering in which direction all these small changes are going. So this will be my relevant Taylor series. And for that matter, we are writing this thing. Here we want to capture the changes in the neighborhood and how all these changes in the neighborhood will, you know, how there will be a change in this neighborhood given by this term. Is it clear? We are molding the equations accordingly. So this epsilon lies in between x star and x hat. Since fi of all x star, all these first order derivative is equal to 0 by the first order condition, we have this dy x star is equal to this f1 x star, f2 x star, you know, this is equal to this multiplied with, as I mentioned, these epsilon lies between x star and x hat. So we are multiplying this by x1 hat minus x1 star. And this is equal to 0. All dy x star can be presented in this way. You know, x star was there and we are taking derivative of this thing. This was actually our dy. So I'm putting that expression. This expression, you know, dy x star. And then I'm multiplying it by this new factor, the difference between x1 hat and x1 star. And this I am setting equal to 0. Moreover, since d square y less than 0, it must also be the case that for x hat sufficiently close to x star, and hence epsilon is very close to x star, d square y x hat will also be less than 0, and d square y of epsilon, that will be also less than 0. So if you understand this logic, if we combine all these things, f of x hat minus f of x star, that is dy of x star plus d square y of epsilon, you know, that will be less than 0. F of x hat minus f of x star, okay, and dy of x star, this thing is equal to 0. So the remaining term is d square epsilon. So this d square epsilon is less than 0. So in other words, if f of x hat is less than f of x star, for any x hat near x star, if fi of x star is equal to 0 and this less than 0, thus x star yields a local maximum. So check all these things. Generally, we will not use these version when we will go for economics. We will use the Hessian determinant version. So please check all these things. There may be some points which is not clear at this moment. The note is there with you, you know, and today also I'll send you the record. So you may check all these things. However, while we will apply all these things in context of economics, we will go for another version where we will use the Hessian determinant, okay? And that Hessian determinant version will be, you know, more easier to understand the matter, okay? So I like to go for that version, you know, I like to go for that version because that will be more easier to all of you. Okay. So to keep track of second order derivatives, it is best to use a matrix. Okay, so we are moving towards that direction. That will be easier to interpret, easier to understand, etc. For example, if there is y of f of x1, x2, there are 4 second order partial derivatives. Because you can take the derivative of this expression with respect to x1, so f1, 1. You can take the derivative with respect to second order derivative. First, you have the f1, you know, del y by del x1 and del y by del x2. That is already, you have f1 and f2, and then you are taking derivative of del y by del x1, again with respect to x1, okay, and del y by del x2, again with respect to x1, okay. So you are getting f11 and f21. Del f1 by del x1 is with you, and then you are taking derivative of this thing so that you are getting f11. Similar, in the similar way, you can generate f12, f21 and f22. Okay, so if there are 2 variables, you will have 4 second order derivatives. If you have 3 variables, you will have 3 square. So number of variables square, 9 second order partial derivatives, and so on. So for n equal to 2, you will get this structure. For n is equal to 3, you will get this structure, and we notationally we present this thing in this format. And if there are n variables we can generate, this matrix of order n by n. Okay, for 2 variables, for second order derivative, you can generate a 2 by 2 matrix. For 3 variables, 3 by 3 matrix. For n variables, you can generate n by n matrix. Okay. Now, the matrix of second order partials of F is called the Hessian matrix. All these things you have presented or we present can be presented in terms of Hessian matrix. Okay, Hessian matrix. So this notation reverse delta 2F is equivalent to Hessian matrix of order 2. Okay. When d square y is positive, this Hessian matrix is a positive definite if and only if all leading principal minors are positive. So you have to understand whether a function is a maximum or a minimum looking at Hessian determinant following the signs of the principal minors. So from d square y concept, we are moving towards the notion of age. Okay, from the idea of second derivative, we are trying to frame the matrix H first, and then we will talk about the sign of this matrix H, okay, or signs of the principal minors of matrix H. Looking at the signs of the principal minors of matrix H, you will understand whether a function is a maximum or a minimum or it is a saddle point. So we are moving towards that direction. Okay, so I'm again starting from this point. D square y is positive, that is the matrix delta 2, I am calling it delta, though it is reverse delta. Delta 2F is a positive definite if and only if d square y is positive and this matrix is a positive definite if and only if all leading principal minors are positive. Okay. Now, if all leading principal minors are positive, in that case, a function will be a strictly convex function. Okay. Thus, for any function y is equal to fx, x lying in the real space, which is twice continuously differentiable with Hessian H, the function f is strictly convex if H is positive definite, strictly concave. Strictly convex means global maximum, global minimum, Strictly convex means global minimum when H is positive definite. Okay, so just I'm marking. Okay. If the function is convex, then H is positive semi-definite. Here you can talk about local minimum. However, you do not know about the global nature when H is semi-definite, positive semi-definite. Okay.
Ma'am, so here, do we mention local minimum or we do not?
We present it as a convex, and concave function. However, conceptually, this is related to.
Ma'am, can you tell me what does leading principal minors mean?
Yeah, I'll come to that. Already all these things are in the note. However, I'll come to that. Okay. So first you try to understand how we are using the notion of strict convexity, strict concavity, convexity and concavity with H. Because I mentioned we will work with this H. In context of economics, we will not go for, all these Taylor series, difference, all these things we will not consider. Rather, we will consider this version. We will look at the determinant or the matrix H, we will look at matrix H and we'll come to conclusion. All conditions on H are only sufficient in case of strict convexity and concavity. The conditions are both necessary and sufficient in case of weak convexity and concavity. Okay, when we will do the numericals, we'll give the examples, all these things will be more clear to all of us. So now I have to talk about leading principal minors. The conditions for a matrix to be positive or negative definite depend on the leading principal minors of the matrix. As I mentioned, if leading principal minors are these, leading principal minors are that, So whether the function will be positive definite, negative definite, all these things will depend on the leading principal minors. Now, what are these leading principal minors? Look at these n by n determinant. Okay. So first principal minors will be, all these F11, F22 up to Fnn. So all these things which are in the diagonal, these are all first principal minor. Okay, first principal minor. So if you look at this, F11, F22, F33, if I consider a 3 by 3 case, these are principal minors. Okay, if I consider a 3 by 3, this is the final form. So all these are principal minors, first principal minors. Second is all possible values, starting from here, F11, F12, F21, F22, or F11, F13, F21, F23, and this one, F22, F23, F32, F33. Okay, so first I have to consider the terms along the diagonal. Then I'll start from this node, F11, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. Then with F11, rest of the things. Then we will move to the second point in the diagonal and we'll consider this. Okay. So in this way, now if I have the matrix of 4 by 4, here we will have another element F44, and here also we will have another element, consisting of F11, F21, F14, F24. Okay, so it will increase in this way. Okay, in that case there will be H3 star, in H3 star there will be 2 elements and there will be another H4 star. Okay, so in this way we write the principal minors. In general case, when we are considering a single determinant of H1 like this or H2, that means the other possible principal minors of same order implicit in them. So H1 doesn't mean F11. H1 means F11, F22, F33. Okay. H2 star, that means all possible minors of order 2 by 2. H3 star means all possible minors or determinant of order 3 by 3 and so on. So this is principal minors.
Ma'am,
Yes.
here how we are selecting all possible means there can be more second order determinants.
Starting from the looking at the diagonal, looking at the diagonal. So first I am considering the thing in this way. I am just picking and choosing the diagonal elements. Okay. Then I am considering this node in the diagonal, and with this node how many things I can frame. Then the second node F22, and with this how many 2 by 2 I can frame. Then this third node and so on.
Yes, ma'am, got it.
So Udita, you also got the thing? What is meant by principal minors?
Yes, ma'am.
There are some examples, the leading principal minors F11. For H2, I can consider F11, 122, 122. For HN, I can consider this one, However, to elaborate this more perfectly, I used an example of 3 by 3 matrix, and these are the all possible minors, with the note that in general we are considering a single determinant for H1, any single determinant, F11, F22, F33, everything will come. H2 means all possible principal minors of the same order. H3 means all possible principal minors of order 3 and so on. Let H be the Hessian matrix associated with a twice continuously differentiable function. Y is equal to fx, x lying in the real space. So starting point is same. We are considering y is equal to f of x. X is a vector of n variables. Starting point is same. And all these points lie on the real space. All these things are same. H is a positive definite on real space if and only if its leading principal minors are positive. Okay. Now what is this H1 means? Only F11, or what other things are there?
From all diagonal elements.
All principal diagonal elements.
Yes. H2, det H2, that means all possible cofactors
Yes,
of order 2 by 2. How we will frame this? Looking at the diagonal elements. H3, all possible third order. Hn, all, the Hn should be one, because when you are considering all possible values, there will be a single matrix. Okay. And all together, we are calling it H, will be positive. So H is positive definite if and only if its leading principal minors are positive, which we can write as finally H, determinant H, det H greater than 0. In this case, this is equivalent to d square y is positive. And so F is strictly convex. So h greater than 0 or all principal minors are positive, that is equivalent to d square y greater than 0, which in turn implies the function is a strictly convex function. H is a negative definite if and only if its leading principal minors alter in sign starting with negative. So what I am telling, H is a negative definite if and only if its leading principal minors alter in sign. I am not telling all principal minors will be negative. I am telling that all principal minors alter in sign starting with negative. So how I am presenting this? All F11, F22, F33, all these things will be negative because starting with negative, beginning with negative. All second order values, you know, that is F11, F12, F21, F22, all these things will be positive. Okay. Now the final value, you know, the final value will depend on whether it will be positive or negative, will depend on if greater than 0 if n is even and less than 0 if n is odd. The final value will depend on the factor that whether n is even or n is odd. The sign of this last one will depend on the fact that whether n is even or whether n is odd. Okay. If n is odd, what will be the sign? Negative. Because, you know, it is starting with negative. Odd value is negative. And it will be positive if it is even. If you look at 2, 4, all these values are positive. In this case, d square y is less than 0. So this case is equivalent to d square y is less than 0. And here, f is strictly concave. Here, x is strictly concave. Now, if I write the expression, you know, following f11, etc. So, f11 less than 0, f22 less than 0, f11, f12, f21, f22, or f11, f21, f13, f23, or f22, f32, f23, f33, all these values will be positive. And these last 3 by 3, that will be negative, and so on. Okay. So you need to, henceforth, you need to relate the concept of second order derivative with Hessian determinant. Second order derivative positive, you know, that means strict convexity. So you have to relate it with the principal minors of Hessian determinant. If all principal minors are positive, in that case, a function is a convex function. And a function is a convex function, that means maximum or minimum?
Minimum.
Global minimum.
So if all principal minors of a Hessian determinants are positive, in that case, you are getting a global minimum. If all principal minors, you know, sorry, if principal minors alter in sign starting with negative, that means d square y is negative. That indicates the function is strictly concave, and that means it is a maximum. So in case of maximum, you have to prove Hessian determinants are altering in sign. Principal minors of Hessian determinants are altering in sign. And in case of minimum, you have to show all principal minors of Hessian determinants are positive. So remember this thing. When in context of economics, we will try to prove whether the value we have derived, it is a maximum or minimum, we will follow this principle. We will follow this principle. So try to learn this principle very, very well. H is positive semi-definite if and only if all the principal minors are positive or zero. Here we are bringing the weak definition. Weak definition. Greater than equal to 0. Greater than equal to 0. Okay. Greater than equal to 0. So in that case, d square y is also greater than equal to 0 and f is convex. Actually, linearity is also there. Apart from the convex function, linear function is both convex and concave. So linearity we are bringing here. So it is becoming weak convex. We are calling it convex. We are not calling it strict convex. Okay. And on the other hand, H is negative semi-definite. Okay. If and only if all principal minors alter in sign starting with negative or 0. Okay. So H1 star less than equal to 0, H2 star greater than equal to 0. And in the similar fashion, we are moving up to Hn star. Now the final value will be greater than equal to 0 or less than equal to 0, depending on whether n is even or n is odd. Okay. Now in this case, d square y is less than equal to 0. This means f is concave. So here f is not strictly concave, rather it is a concave function. Okay. Moreover, if f is concave, this set of conditions must hold. Okay. So this point is continuation with this one. Okay. Okay. So these 4 conditions you have to keep in your mind, because in context of profit maximization or revenue maximization or whatever thing we will do, as second order condition, you have to show all these things. Okay. So try to remember all these 1, 2, 3, 4 conditions. The conditions for strict convexity, concavity, that is the conditions for maximum, minimum, global, local, all these things you please keep in your mind. Okay. And I hope you will understand all these points. The same thing I have written once again: strict convexity, strict concavity, and concavity and convexity, which is related to unique global maximum, unique global minimum, local maximum, local minimum. So please go through all these points, you will understand these points, So here also there is continuation of the things. So I hope everybody will understand these points now. And then there are several workout examples. Take all these things and then start solving all these problems. Today I'll solve this problem number 4. And in these slides, another important thing is the Young's theorem that I am mentioning once again. This is Young's theorem. Okay. This is related to the partial. If Ij is equivalent to Fji, that is F12 is equivalent to F21. So there is a function f. First you can consider df by dx1 and then you can take derivative of this with respect to x2. Therefore you are getting d square f by dx1 dx2. Or you can first take the derivative with respect to x2 and then you can consider the derivative with respect to x1. whatever you do, you will get the same result. First, you can take derivative with respect to the first variable, and then the second derivative with respect to the second, or first you can take derivative with respect to the second variable, and then you can take derivative with respect to first. Whatever you do, you will get the same result. Fij is equivalent to Fji. This is known as Young's theorem. Okay, Young's theorem. There is a note on partial derivatives. Actually, you did all these things in the last semester, I think. Partial derivatives?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So you know all these things, because in case of partial derivatives, as I mentioned in the beginning, I am varying one variable and keeping rest of the variables fixed. So this is equivalent to a single variable operation. As an example, as I mentioned, the short run cases, I am varying one factor, keeping rest of the factors constant. Okay. So all these partial derivatives we generally discuss in context of single variable optimization case. However, there is a note, if anyone, want to check the things you need to know, so all the things are there. And maybe you are familiar with the Young's theorem too. I'm not sure. Therefore, I kept Young's theorem also in this context. Then there is an example, related to the Cobb-Douglas production function, So check all these things. X1 and X2, two inputs we have considered. And then I considered X2 to remain fixed and derive this kind of derivatives, partial derivatives. So all these things are there. And then you can keep X1 fixed and you can take derivative with respect to X2. So you can check all these things. However, this part is related to the single variable. You can keep it as a part of the two variable or n variable case as well. However, here we are varying one variable, keeping rest of the variables constant. So these are the things I hope you will be able to understand. There is no economics there, only, you have to check several things.
Ma'am, I had a question.
Yes.
Ma'am, we said that if the Hessian matrix means if it is for positive definite, we said it was convex, right? Ma'am, but for
definite, yes, strictly, yeah. Positive definite, it is strict convex.
Ma'am, but for saying that the function is continuous, we need to check the entire domain, ma'am. So we are not checking the entire domain, we are just checking for a point. So how we are saying that the function will be convex throughout the domain?
No, for the given function, we will consider the entire domain. Why you are telling that? I'm not considering the domain, all possible derivatives we are considering.
Ma'am, we are considering all possible derivatives at one point. That is, we took one vector, right? X star means. But
yes.
For a function to be convex throughout means it should be, we need to check the entire domain of the function. That is what I'm saying. Since we cannot see at a point that it is convex, then it will remain convex throughout. That is what I'm saying.
For a particular function, we will consider the domain. Okay, not the entire domain as such, because I have a function here. Okay, when we will apply the economic context, we will have a particular function, and for that particular function, we have to check whether the point is a maximum or whether the point is a minimum.
Yes, ma'am. For
consider
for extremum values, we are considering one point. But
Yes.
when we are talking about curvature, convexity or concavity means, and we are saying that the function is convex. To actually ensure this, we need to means focus on the domain, not just at one point.
That we do not do, we will not do, we will consider for a particular point only. Here we will consider the second order condition, for that particular curve only we will consider that thing, because when we will consider, say, a profit function or a cost function or the utility function, whatever. So all possible values we will not consider. We will not do the things in that way. For this particular function only we will discuss the matter. Okay. So as I mentioned, in context of economics, under most of the circumstances, we will consider an equivalence between the local and the global. Okay, so first problem is using the H determinant, determine the convexity or concavity property of the function. So please do all these things and check the matter. Second question 2. Okay, I'll solve this question number 4 in the class. Solve the competitive firms profit maximizing use of labor and capital for the case, this is the production function, and we have these things with us. So we will solve this question number 4. I hope everybody has pen and paper with you. Everyone has pen and paper? If not, bring, some paper so that you can solve the problem. Is there anyone who already did these things? Upanita, Kritika, Oyon, Prithviraj, anyone did this thing?
Ma'am, I can try. I'll tell you.
First, everyone has pen and paper?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we are, just look at the question number 4. We are considering a competitive firm's profit maximization, and we have to find out the maximizing labor and profit maximizing amount of labor and capital. Production function, everybody please write down the production function. Somebody will help us. However, please write down the function. Y is equal to L to the power 0.25, K to the power 0.5. Can you tell me what is the form of this production function? What function?
Cobb-Douglas.
Cobb-Douglas.
Yes. Then we have information on price, P is equal to 64. We have information on W is equal to 2. And we have information on R, which is equal to 4. W is the wage rate, R is the rental rate of capital. Okay. So yes, somebody told me
Ma'am, Upanita here.
Upanita, how I'll start doing this?
We'll first write the profit equation.
Profit equation, everybody. You have to write a profit equation. Please start doing that. Upanita, tell us what will be the profit equation.
Yes, ma'am. It should be PY minus WL minus RK, which is 64L.
You tell us it will be pi will be equal to total revenue minus total cost.
Yes.
Everybody, first write down. The profit equation is given by pi is equal to TR minus TC. Total revenue minus total cost. Then you please write down equal to P into Y.
PY minus WL minus RK.
Yes, PY minus WL minus RK. Okay. Then in place of P, you can put 64 as Upanita started to tell everybody. So Upanita, would you please help for the third line?
Yes, ma'am. 64 into L to the power 0.25 into K to the power 0.5
Plus. Sorry, minus.
minus 2L minus 4K.
Yes. So everybody has this expression with you?
Yes,
We
ma'am.
have to find out the values of L and K. Okay. We have to find out the values of L and K. Profit maximizing values of L and K. Okay. So in the once we have the profit equation, please you can write down or you can remember here L and K are the variables and all these P, W, R, these are the parameters. Okay. So L and K are variables, P, W, R, these are the parameters. So in the next step, we have to consider the first order conditions. So give heading FOCs, first order conditions. The first expression is
D pi by DL equal
del
to
pi by del.
del pi by del L equal to
Del pi by del L. Yes, equal to
64 into 1 by 4 into L to the power minus 3 by 4 into K to the power half minus 2 equal to 0.
everybody got it. If there is anyone, who needs the points to be repeated once again, please tell us. You can take derivative on your own, no problem. In the similar fashion, you have to do it for K, del pi by del K. And then you have to set that equal to 0. Solving these two equations, you need to find out L star and K star. Once you get L star and K star, we have to put the values in the profit equation to get pi star. So whoever will get the value, please let us know. Upanita has the value with her, maybe. So we will check.
I haven't solved it. I'm doing it now only. I've done it
Okay.
now.
Okay. So very good. So please do this thing. Anyone? Getting the value of L. Atri, are you doing the things? Atri, Rajoshi. Okay. Anurag?
Yes, ma'am, I'm doing.
Acha, very good.
Yes,
Anurag,
ma'am.
got the values?
Yes, ma'am. Doing.
Okay.
No, ma'am. I'm trying to one of the else.
Sampriti, Srishti, Shogato, Sneha.
Yes, I'm doing.
Okay. Jar hoye jabe. What is the value?
For me, it's coming L equal to K.
You're
What is
getting
the value? L star is equal to?
Ma'am, on solving, I'm getting L equal to K right now.
Okay. And L is equal to K. And what is the value?
I'll just substitute.
Is it 64?
L star is equal to K star is equal to 64.
Mom, I'm not sure. I did it very fast, so I have to check.
Yeah. Let other people do. If anyone else get the same value, then this is the right answer.
Yes, ma'am, it's 64.
Both L star and K star are 64. Would I want to know whether L star is equal to K star or not?
No, ma'am. I personally got L star is equal to 64 and then K star I'm calculating.
Okay.
Ma'am, L star is equal to K star. I'm getting.
Would you please repeat once again?
Ma'am, both L and K are equal.
Okay. So in that case, what will be the pi star value? was also 64. So your y will be basically 64 to the power 0.25 and
Ma'am, I'm not getting 64 as K star and L star.
So even I'm getting 64.
okay, so your L value is not 64.
I'm getting 4096.
L is equal to 4016.
4096.
Yes, ma'am. I am getting the same. 8 to the power 4.
Yes, ma'am. 4096.
Yes, ma'am.
4096. And K is 4096.
Yes, ma'am. That should be the case since L is equal to Q.
Yes, ma'am. Even I'm getting 4096.
Okay. There is a lot of differences, you know. Some people are getting the value to be 64 and some people are getting the value 4096. Okay. So most of the students are getting 4096.
Mom, even I'm getting 4096. I was getting 64 earlier. I had missed out on 2 powers of 8, and after adding it, I'm getting 4096.
Okay. So I think 4096 will be the right answer then, since many of the students are getting this value. And L is equal to K, that part is right.
Yes, ma'am.
That is true for everybody.
Ma'am, can you show the working ones? I'm getting 1 by 4096.
It's a negative power, so it will be 4096 in the numerator in the end.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Even I'm getting 4096.
4096, okay. And labor and capital are identical.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I think that will be the answer. L star is equal to K star is equal to 4096. That will be the answer. Okay, and now you have to show that the solution is a true maximum. So from here, I hope you will be able to, all of you will be able to find out the pi star, what I suggested to find, you know. So you will get y star. Once you put the value of L here and K here, you will get y star. And so, and once you get y star, you will get total revenue is Y star into this 64, and total cost L star and K star are with you. So you will be able to calculate the total cost part. So subtracting the total, because total cost will be 4096 into 2 plus 4096 into 4. That will be the total cost. So if you subtract the total cost from that total revenue, you will be able to get pi star.
8192.
8192. Let me write this thing. Just sum total of these two values.
No, ma'am, the entire pi star is 8192.
Would you please repeat?
Yes, ma'am. It is actually technically the sum total.
Okay. So it is perfectly done. Total revenue minus total cost.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So others also please check, whether you are getting the value of pi star to be this one. Okay. Once you complete this part, you need to consider the second order condition. Show that the solution is a true maximum. Okay. So how we will proceed for this part? The second part.
Hessian.
Hessian determinant, yes. Now, you need a proper expression with respect to which you will get the derivatives and find out the thing, So, how we will proceed?
We will find the partial derivative.
Second order partial derivative.
Second order partial derivatives, yes. Partial derivatives with respect to, would you please tell me what derivatives you will consider?
Pi LL, pi LK, pi KL, and pi KK.
Yes. So pi function should be written in terms of K and L. Okay. Pi function should be written in terms of K and L. Otherwise, you will be not able to take derivative.
Yes, ma'am.
So all the expressions here, you please keep in terms of K and L. So 64 you consider like this. And would you please tell me what was the expression? L to the power 0.25. Huh?
Yes, ma'am. 0.25.
Yes, ma'am.
And to the power 0.5.
Minus 2L minus 4K.
So keep the expression like this, and then you take all second order derivatives. This will be exactly equal to so you need to find only one. all these things. You need to find out. And you need to check, this is pi 1, 1. Or pi LL, whatever. And this is pi LK. This is pi KL. And this is pi KK. So once you get this thing, you need to check for the profit function. You have to show it is a maximum. So what idea we will consider?
First, the mod H1, which means the first principal minor, and
Negative.
then the determinant of H means the
I'm asking about the sign.
Ma'am, that is first principal minor should be negative.
Negative, then positive, then negative.
Yeah. So these two things should be negative. So principal minus will alter in sign starting with negative. If we can show all these things, then it is a true maximum. So I hope all of you will be able to get the values finally, L star, K star, pi star. This is one part. Then you consider the second order derivatives. Then applying the Hessian principle, you need to check whether the function is a true maximum or not. Okay, so in context of economics, we do the things in this way. And once you get the derivatives, you know, already the L and K values are with you. So you will be able to show whether the values are negative, positive, everything you will be able to show, since already the values are with you. Is it clear? The idea is clear to all of you? How we will proceed, how we will do the matter? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Raunak, Ayon, Sham,
Yes, ma'am.
Anandarupa, are you understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So complete all these things. Complete all. So complete up to this. You know, already the things are with you. This expressions are also there. So in the weekend, please complete up to this. Go through the points, check everything, whether the things are clear to all of you or not. Okay. Solve all the exercises. So complete up to this in the weekend so that we can proceed further